Good evening, everybody. I hope this video finds you in the pink of health and best of spirits. Okay, the topic of this video is why we need to make government schools more attractive to parents and students. This is imperative need of the hour and crying need of the hour and day. That's why I would like to allocate and dedicate some time for this and give it the attention and this thing that it deserves, the audience that it deserves. Okay, let us begin this video by tracing the history of education in brief. The first urban civilization in India, as you know, is the Indus Valley civilization, the oldest among the old world civilizations. We have the concepts of argonauts of Indus Valley civilization. That is the term I would like to use for it. Some of them, apparently, a small number of elites at least, traveled to Egypt in Northeast Africa. Some traveled to Dilmun in East Arabia. Some traveled to Magan or Oman. Some traveled to Giraffe, Iran. Some traveled to Mesopotamia, Iraq. Some traveled to the southern part of Central Asia, apparently. A few reached some parts of South India also. The Indus script, if you see, as a writing system, was apparently very short. However, apparently, it could have been it was most likely a logographic script, notwithstanding the absence of longer text. They may be found in due course. For example, we have the Doravira signboard, which is a precursor to longer text and displayed random sign repetition. Again, we do not know if scribes existed. There was limited literacy in post-Harappan India also. I've written about this in my paper. Additionally, the Harappans mass-produced writing too from dice in a way that contemporary civilizations did not. Okay. Mesopotamian scribes existed for sure. Egyptian scribes existed for sure. In post-Harappan India, we apparently had a Gurukula system, which was restricted to a small number of elites, where students or sishyas learned from gurus or preceptors after living with them for many years. This is believed to have been practiced. This is most likely to have been true based on textual evidence. Okay. However, this theory needs to be reconciled with practical up-to-date historical models. There was also some kind of an education system prevalent, formal education system prevalent in British India. Okay. After the Gurukula system, where initiation was undertaken by a preceptor, other notable centers of learning began to be established. Okay. Then, after the dawn of British era, Buddhist scholars also began to move southward towards present-day Tamil Nadu, establishing stupas in Amaravati, and in the north coastal region of Visakhapatnam region of Andhra Pradesh, establishing stupas at Shankaram, Bojanakonda, and Toslakonda. However, the jewel in the crown is the ancient learning institute established as Taxila around 800 BC, Pakistan, Punjab region of present-day Pakistan. Some highly skeptical people like Sty Farmer rubbish this, but apparently there was some system there because there are ruins of Taxila. And in the words of eminent and redoubtable archaeologist John Marshall, in early Buddhist literature, particularly in the Jatakas, which are a voluminous body of literature dated to sometime after 600 BC, Taxila is famously mentioned as a center of learning where students could get instruction in almost any subject, religious or secular, from the Veda to mathematics and medicine, even astrology and archaeology. Okay. However, most scholars may not consider Taxila to be full-fledged university in the modern sense of the term. Nalanda University, one of the world's oldest universities in the modern sense of the term, existed after this, and learning rooms existed there, and subjects were taught in the Pali language. The university apparently hosted a large number of books and attracted a large number of scholars from the subcontinent and elsewhere. Nalanda is now a UNESCO World Heritage Site. However, Nalanda was destroyed by Bakhyar Kijilin in the 1190s. He had sought to eradicate and destroy Buddhist culture and its diversity. Okay, this was ransacked and pillaged by marauding Islamic invaders. At around 500 BC, institutions are also believed to have cropped up in places such as Vikramasira, Odantapuri, and other places in North India. Chanakya of the 4th century BC was a famous Indian thinker. He had authored a book called the Arthashastra, a treatise on politics and economics. In later times, Shramanas and Brahmanas supported education by means of donations. Education was mostly religious in nature, but secular subjects such as medicine and archaeology were also taught. In 1771, Charles Grant recommended that English education be introduced in India, with English being the official language. In 1813, the Charter Act of 1813 was introduced, which implied the continuation of British rule in India. Under this act, rupees 1 lakh per year was allocated to the subject field of education. There were many social reformers and educators too at that time, because this was some kind of a renaissance associated, particularly in Bengal region, in the eastern part of the subcontinent, apparently. Raja Rammohn Roy, the founder of Brahmo Samaj, emerged as one of the leading intellectuals in the 19th century. He is called the father of the modern Indian Renaissance due to the changes he education instituted in India, uh, opposing barbaric practices like sati, dowry, and etc. And he also proposed and implemented English education in India. He is sometimes known as the father of modern India, father of Bengal Renaissance, for his lasting contributions to education. Some Hindu scholars want to pick up a quarrel with him, but again, everything should be based on sound epistemology. Roy also believed, Raja Ramohan Roy believed that English language education was vastly, infinitely, and inherently superior to the traditional Indian education system, and suggested that Indians learn English and acquire a Western education. From the 1820s, he founded many schools to educate Indians at Western orientation, which is Western education, particularly scientific education through English. He also supported David Hare's efforts to found the Hindu College, and he established the Vedanta College also. Okay. Later in 1835, the English Education Act was passed by the British government of India. And this decision was made by Lord William Bentinck, the then Governor General of the British East India Company. And this made English a formal system of education, formal medium of education. And the Macaulay Minute is named after Thomas Babington Macaulay's proposal to promote the English language in lieu of vernacular languages. He proposed that English be taught instead of Persian, Sanskrit, and Arabic also. Okay. Therefore, he wanted to have a class of persons who were Indian in blood and color, but English in taste, opinions, morals, and intellect. Okay. However controversial this may have had some benefits because it promoted a greater deal of self-awareness, greater amount quantum of self-awareness among the Indian population. Eventually, Indians were able to throw off British colonial yoke and tyranny. Okay. Okay, however, the Indian education system was very narrow in scope and only small groups of intellectuals profited and benefited. Education was not provided to the vast teeming masses and teeming millions in India who seemed to be, who were apparently illiterate for the most part. Okay, after independence in 1947, the government introduced many different schemes to address the low level of literacy. However, Nehru had probably a major weakling. He supported and proposed higher education and neglected universal mass literacy entirely, probably because he felt that it could not be compatible with the socialist system. And Maulana Abdul Azam Kalam Azad was India's first Minister of Education. He wanted a strong central government over education throughout India. Okay. Then later the government introduced the University Education Commission, Secondary Education Commission, the University Grants Commission, which is now known as UGC, the Kothari Commission, etc., to develop means, methods, and mechanisms to streamline India's education system. He also had Kendriya Vidyalaya, or KVs, Indian Institute of Technologies or IITs, All India Institute of Medical Sciences, later Indian Institute of Management and now the IM, National Council of Education Research and Training or NCERT, National Skill Development Agency, etc. That came much later. And Nehru did understand the importance of education to national progress. However, how many his ideas were education, mass literacy languished in the 1990s. Then later there was a change in government and the Congress was thrown out of power. Okay, so literacy rates hovered around the 30% mark, even in early 1980s, which is rather poor indeed by international standards. And until 1976, education was deemed to be a state subject. However, with the passage of the 42nd Amendment, it became a concurrent subject in both central and state governments could contribute meaningfully. Okay, and afterwards we had adult education program and the universal adult literacy campaigns were instituted. Vocational training also was instituted. VTS vocational training institutes were provided. Indian vocational training institutes are also known as IVTI, and we also had a National Vocational Education Qualification Network or NVEQF, Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan or SSA, which means Education for All campaign in the Hindi language, was instituted and promoted in the 90s, and education levels, literacy levels increased greatly, rapidly. Okay, and the universalization of enrollment in elementary education was also based on the 86th Amendment to the Constitution of India. Okay, therefore, by the 90s, educational attainment had catapulted to an altogether high. higher trajectory, higher level. Okay, 200 billion Indian school were put into schools in a time-bound manner. This program was also based on the vision of the then Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee. Okay, however, even though this was successful, it did not achieve its games, goals, and objectives completely. The World Bank, the UNICEF, and the Department for International Development have also supported Indian government initiatives. Later in 2010, we had the Right to Education Act or RTE. Okay. Other schemes such as the midday meal scheme were introduced by the former Tamil Nadu Chief Minister Dr. M.G. Ramchandran or MGR. The Samagra Siksha Abhiyan, the Rashtriya Madhyamak Siksha Abhiyan for the development of secondary education, launched in 2009, etc. Then later in central and north India, we had the Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao scheme instituted in 2015, and the National Digital Education Architecture was launched as recently as 2021 to boost digital infrastructure for education. Okay, more and more parents are also now realizing the importance of education, and the demand for English education is also skyrocketed. Okay, and however, the quality of education imparted in both town private schools has been questioned. It was found recently that many English teachers in Bihar did not know basic English, and this is not just related to English language alone. Other subjects also they did not know. Teacher and student absenteeism is high, and there has been some improvement now because some universities have been doing very well indeed, but primary education is languishing, is subpar. The quantum of education research conducted in Indian universities is also very low. Okay, and still Western universities remain a big magnet, remain a big attraction, and that is okay. Indians are doing very well abroad in the USA, in Europe also, whichever country they go to. But still, the quality of education in India is still subpar. Okay, and in 2020, the central government launched the national education policy based on work done by T.S.R. Subramaniam, Krishnasamy Kasturi Rangan, etc. Our education, however, it has not been widely accepted by all states. Some people say it promotes Hindutva agenda, and this also encourages vernacular language teaching, but does not make it mandatory. But again, this is a half-baked solution because most Indian languages are not yet ready for higher education. Okay, and it does not take into account language dynamic or legal status of language in India. It may appear to play a second fiddle to the Hindi, Hindustan rhetoric of the RSS. That's what their uh, this some of its critics allege. Okay, we also have had foundational literacy and numeracy programs, National Mission on Foundational Literacy and Numeracy, Nipun Bharat Mission, of the National Initiative of Proficiency in Reading and Writing and Numeracy. Okay, and we also had a higher education grants council, which has been sought to be established. The 10 plus 2 plus 2 structure sought to be replaced with the 5.3 plus 3 plus 4 model. This is just tinkering. Okay, they're trying to bring down the admission age from 5 to 6 years for first standard. Why around India's top? These are meaningless tinkering because when people don't have much substance to offer, meat to offer, then they come up with all these things. Okay, and then there is also an attempt to introduce foreign educations in India. And in spite of all these meaningful efforts, the amount of percentage of GDP spent on education is abysmally poor, abysmally low. China spends a higher percentage of its GDP on education. The world average is also much higher. Okay, and still we have rote learning. Rote learning may, to some extent, usher in a scenario where we have proficiency in core competencies, but rote learning alone is not enough. It hampers with students' thought processes. Okay, people store information, but they don't know how to use it. There is no experiential knowledge. Syncretic approach, interdisciplinary approach, transdisciplinary approaches are not emphasized. Okay, there is no knowledge on how to use knowledge in the practical world. And again, there is a wide variation between urban areas, rural areas, private schools, public schools. Okay, and there is a wide variation between state to state also. State like Bihar are doing rather more poorly. Okay, therefore, India is just like I spoken about a multi-speed civilization. You also have a multi-speed education. Okay, and at the time of Indian independence, many people were steeped in the past. They were very narrow-minded and parochialistic. For example, we had Hindi chauvinism proposed by R.B. Dulekar, Purushottam Das, and Ram Manohar Lohiya and others. Later by Mulayam Singh Yadav. Okay, they wanted only Hindi and they wanted other Indian languages, some of them, and English definitely be banished. And we had Dravidian nationalism like Kamraj Annadurai, they did not want equal position. That is fine because in this position, the way it was envisaged was not good at all. But still, there's no, there was, since most people were driven by ideologies, there was very little ability to communicate and cross communicate, share ideas. And we also must understand that the English is the only viable and neutral link language in a multilingual country from the country like India. English is also different in India, is also different from China, because I have written 13 points of difference between India and China. Okay. And again, universities are increasing. The quality of education in universities is very poor. A lot of cheating and drinking going on. And the industrialists must be encouraged to set up universities. Actually, I support foreign universities setting up campuses in India. Quality must be maintained and automation can be pursued in the long run. Okay. And if you see the history of government schools, they were launched in British India, but mostly restricted to cities and big towns. We had Anglo vernacular schools, military schools, and we had schools like the Barakpur government high schools, etc. The reach was, of course, limited, and this type of education fostered British values. I have had the honor and privilege of tracing British school education system in Anandapur district in Andhra Pradesh. Okay, and even after independence, the quality has not improved. Actually, it has regressed in some cases. There is a need to improve salaries of teachers to attract talent. We need to have better teachers, higher quality teachers, better training. Teacher training may be important. More high quality training, talent must be attracted in teaching. Better teacher commitment from be ensured and fostered. We must deal with absenteeism of teachers and students. Okay, termination of teachers and teaching staff based on poor performance. Better teachers discipline also must be there. And I have had highlights from India's 2023-2024 Food Infrastructure Report. It offers a comprehensive overview of the strides made and the gaps that persist in schools. This is based on the Unified District Information System for Education Plus, UDISE Plus for 2023. According to this report, out of over 14.71 lakh schools in India, nearly 1.52 lakh schools lack even electricity, basic functional electricity. Out of 17.71 lakh schools, 10.17 lakh schools are government run. According to among these, 9.12 lakh have functional electricity, while 1.52 lakhs do not have electricity access. Aside from even electricity supply is not regular, it's erratic. Aside from government-run schools, there are 4.54 lakh government-aided, private, unaided, and other schools, of which 4.07 lakhs have functional electricity. Out of 14.71 lakh students, only 7.48 lakh students, or 50%, have access to computers for teaching and learning. Additionally, 7.92 lakhs have internet access, while 8.41 lakhs schools have computer facilities. Out of the is 2.86 lakhs with secondary sections, only 1.6 lakhs have an integrated science laboratories. Therefore, the statistics are quite abysmal and very poor, pathetic indeed. Okay, and among all the states in India, government schools in Bihar are the worst. The education system is far in Bihar is far worse than the national average. Out of the 72,063 government schools in Bihar, more than 15,000 do not have benches and desks, and the students sit on the floor, squat on the floor most part of the time. Bihar is therefore by far the worst performer in education. Their teachers cannot read and write properly, neither in English nor even in Hindi. Okay. Now, if you come to the medium of instruction, it's a complex issue. English medium schools cannot be jettisoned because it's lead to a huge furor and outcry. English provides India with a competitive spirit in the international scenario. Okay. Again, I have written about the problems of education. There is an obsession with English medium schools, but the solution to this is not to do away with English medium schools, because I have written that technical knowledge is also important and English gradually can be increased. Automation of education, of course, is a long term solution. Okay. There are problems with private education also, private schools also. We have quality of education, the infrastructure is lacking, quality of education is for some cases. They're most importantly, they're very mercenary and money minded. They overcharge students, they're out of reach for many poor people. Therefore, the solution must be to impart high quality education in the mother tongue in government schools as far as possible. However, English must be taught as a secondary first language as far as possible, and the quality of English taught must be gradually stepped up as students become older and older. This seems to be the only practical and viable approach for government schools. Okay, at the same time, Indian languages must be lexically empowered. Okay, they must be technically empowered. I have written about this in great level of depth. If you try to talk about English medium schools in the government sector, it is possible indeed. But again, ability to attract knowledge, English knowing teachers is a big problem. Students also may not understand if they're taught in English. However, this can be implemented in the long run once automation is of education is done. This may, however, be decades away. Let me take you through a small experiment in Rajasthan. Teachers withdrew their candidates from English school, saying that they were not able to teach in English. Teachers were not able to teach in English. The concept of English medium schools largely failed in Rajasthan government schools, and the quality of education suffered rather badly, abominably. I have written about uh, mm, linguistic skills, non-linguistic skills requirement. Okay, okay. I have also written about linguistic sweet spot, economic sweet spot. Okay, for some kinds of jobs, English alone will not be sufficient. Technical skills are also required. Okay, so students must be um, aware of all this. Teachers must be aware of all this. Education planners must be all aware of all this. However, as we go to higher and higher levels, more and more English will naturally be taught. Okay, and Uttar Pradesh also we have the same problem. There was an attempt to introduce English medium schools in government sector in Uttar Pradesh. Teachers themselves did not know English, and students could not understand English, and parents also did not know English to teach them. Same problem was there in Andhra Pradesh also. I have written about some such case studies based on my own friends who are not able to teach either English, Hindi, or Telugu after studying in so-called English medium schools. Even Vishweshwara Abdul Kalam tried to studied in government schools, but rather did so well. So there are a lot of um, issues and dimensions involved to whole things, to the whole subject. I had also spoken earlier about Atal Tinkering Labs and other concepts, and we also need to empower Indian languages greatly. Okay, this here the government has not talked. I have devoted and dedicated entire research paper to this. Okay, government schools therefore must be made an attractive option, especially to poor students, and for rural students is the only succor. And the state governments and central governments must work together in cahoots, and they must step up their game and come up with a radical overall assessment of education in villages and rural areas. Okay, we have done very well in some things like telecommunication and national highway program. However, we have failed miserably in primary education. We need a primary education revolution. We need a scientific revolution. We also need a revolution on our power infrastructure. Left wing ideologues earlier couldn't care two hoots about any education. Marxist ideology was not interested in education. Far wing programs also nutcases too. Okay, therefore refer to all our various publications and pedagogy, and then we need to have a this is a glaring and obvious omission actually, and we need to have a major education revolution in countries like India. Thank you. This must be the basis upon which economic development models are formulated.